Vaishnavis. Tvat your Shakshat meeting Karana such action Alada pleasure Vishuddha spiritually purified Abdhi ocean Stitasya being situated may by me Sukhani happiness Prospadayante a small hole created by the hoof of a calf Brahmani the pleasure derived from impersonal Brahman understanding Api also Jagat Guru, O Master of the Universe. Translation and purports by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. My dear Lord, O Master of the Universe, since I have directly seen you, my transcendental bliss has taken the shape of a great ocean. Being situated in that ocean, I now realize all other so-called happinesses to be like the water contained in the hoofprint of a calf. Purport. The transcendental bliss enjoyed in pure devotional service is like an ocean, whereas material happiness is, and even the happiness to be derived from the realization of impersonal Brahman, are just like the water in the hoofprint of a calf. This is a verse from the Hari Bhakti Sudhodaya, 1436. So I'll read text 99 and a longer purport for this verse. After hearing Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, all the Mayavadi sannyasis were moved, their minds changed, and thus they spoke with pleasing words. Purport. The Mayavadi sannyasis met Caitanya Mahaprabhu at Varanasi to criticize the Lord regarding his participation in the Sankirtan movement, which they did not like. This demoniac nature of opposition to the Sankirtan movement perpetually exists. As it existed in the time of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, similarly it existed long before that, even in the time of Prahlad Maharaj. He used to chant in Sankirtan, although his father did not like it. And that was the reason for misunderstanding between the father and son. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says, Namam duskritina mudha prapajante naradama maya pritagyana asuram bhavam asritaha. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, lowest amongst mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Bhagavad Gita 7:15. The Mayavadi sannyasis are asuram bhavam asritaha, which means that they have taken the path of the asuras, demons, who do not believe in the existence of the form of the Lord. The Mayavadis say that the ultimate source of everything is impersonal, and in this way they deny the existence of God. Saying that there is no God is direct denial of God, and saying that God exists but has no head, legs and hands and cannot speak, hear or eat is a negative way of denying his existence. A person who cannot see is called blind. One who cannot walk can be called lame. One who has no hands can be called helpless. One who cannot speak can be called dumb, and one who cannot hear can be called deaf. The Mayavadi's proposition that God has no legs, no eyes, no ears, and no hands is an indirect way of insulting him by defining him as blind, deaf, dumb, lame, helpless, etc. Therefore, although they present themselves as great Vedantists, they are factually Mayaprita Jnana. In other words, they seem to be very learned scholars, but the essence of their knowledge has been taken away. Impersonalist Mayavadis always try to defy Vaishnavas because Vaishnavas accept the Supreme Personality as the supreme cause and want to serve him, talk with him, and see him, just as the Lord is also eager to see his devotees and talk, eat, and dance with them. These personal exchanges of love do not appeal to the Mayavadi sannyasis. Therefore, the original purpose of the Mayavadi sannyasis of Benares in meeting Caitanya Mahaprabhu was to defeat his personal conception of God. Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, however, as a preacher, turned the minds of the Mayavadi sannyasis. They were melted by the sweet words of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu and thus became friendly and spoke to him also in sweet words. Similarly, all preachers will have to meet opponents, but they should not make them more inimical. They are already enemies, and if we talk with them harshly or impolitely, their enmity will merely increase. We should therefore follow in the footsteps of Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu as far as possible and try to convince the opposition by quoting from the Shastras and presenting the conclusions of the Acharyas. It is in this way that we should try to defeat all the enemies of the Lord. Om Jnanatimanandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmanitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My spiritual master has very kindly come, forced open my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. I offer my most respectful obeisances unto his lotus feet. Vande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaudadaya Pushpabantu Chitro Sandhu Tamonado. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu, unto Lord Nityananda, who are just like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gaudadesh to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benediction upon all. When Mahaprabhu first came to Varanasi, he was expressing spiritual lamentation to his associates that he had come a long way from Bengal and Orissa and he had goods to sell, but he couldn't find any customers in Varanasi. Of course, the merchandise Mahaprabhu had brought with him wasn't anything ordinary. It was the priceless gems of Krishna's holy names. The Maha Mantra and other songs which Mahaprabhu was very fond of chanting in kirtan, such as Hari Haraya Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha, Gopal Govindaram Sri Madhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Marana Mohan. So his associate, actually his uncle, Chandrasekhar Acharya, had been sent ahead by Mahaprabhu at the time of Mahaprabhu's sannyas. He asked him, please go to Varanasi. I'm coming there soon and I'll stay with you. And Chandrasekhar Acharya, he confirmed what Mahaprabhu had just said, that the whole time he'd been in Varanasi, the only names he'd heard was Brahman and Maya. So Mahaprabhu was thinking, well, what do I do? Do I give my merchandise away? Do I sell it at half price? I don't want to take it all the way back down to Bengal and Orissa. So here finally we have the breakthrough. Of course, names like Brahman and Maya are very elevated Sanskrit terms. And Krishna mentions them himself in many places in Bhagavad Gita. Brahmano hi pratistaham, that I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman, the constitutional position of ultimate happiness. And similarly, the Lord explains, though, that persons who take to this path of impersonal Brahman realization, which is just a partial aspect of Krishna's, the absolute truth, they experience nothing but trouble. Klesho dikataras tesham avyakta shakta shetasam avyakta hi gatir dekam dehabadbi avapyute. For those who are on the path of impersonal realization, this path is very troublesome. They experience nothing but difficulty in this particular path. So, and similarly, Maya, we know, Krishna is known as Shaktiman, which means he is the original powerhouse from whom all his different energies come. And in the material world, those energies are manifest in the material nature by the three modes of material nature. Daivihe sugunamaye mamamaya duraktaya. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of nature, is very difficult to overcome, but for one who has surrendered unto me, he can easily cross beyond it. So, Mahaprabhu it is said that he accepted the renounced order of life to deliver everyone. But some of the most stubborn personalities were the very puffed up students of his time and also the impersonalist Mayavadis. But still Mahaprabhu delivered those persons as well, being the Supreme Lord. It's interesting that there's an old saying in India that as goes Bengal, so goes the whole of India. And as goes the whole of India, so eventually goes the whole world. And we see that Mahaprabhu began his Sankirtan movement in Mayapur. And it spread. He and his associates spread the chanting of Hare Krishna all over the subcontinent of India in a very short time. And it's spread all over the world. And there's a saying, east is east and west is west, and never the twain shall meet. Did Mark Twain say that? So, according to our Gaudiya Vaishnava understanding, east means Mayapur, Bengal. And everything heading west from there is west. And we know very early, even 26 Second Avenue days, Prabhupada composed a second pranam mantra and gave it to his first disciples. His first pranam mantra is practically identical to the one that he used to chant when offering obeisances to his spiritual master. There's only one word different to the best of my recollection. Prabhupada we offer respects to as Bhakti Vedanta, and Prabhupada used to offer respects to his spiritual master as Bhakti Siddhanta. But Prabhupada felt it was necessary to give his young students another pranam mantra, and the translation, of course, is, O beloved spiritual master, servant of Saraswati Goswami, you are kindly preaching the message of Lord Caitanya Dev in the Western countries, which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. Prabhupada uses the word filled. So we go west from Mayapur, and a survey was done not too long ago, we've heard, from Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, good authority, that as recently as a few years, 70% of all Indian people, when asked what was their religion, they put Vaishnava, which is interesting. But of course we know that there are Kama Misra Bhaktas of Krishna and Jnana Misra Bhaktas of Krishna. One's bhakti may be slightly tinged or very heavily tinged, either with desires for freedom enjoyment or desires for jnana. Jnana yogis sometimes wrongfully accuse the bhakti yogis, oh, bhakti's very easy, jnana's hard. For those of us who have been aspiring bhakti yogis for some time, we can attest that bhakti yoga isn't that easy. It definitely has its challenges, its trials and tribulations. But it's definitely easier than jnana yoga, which is not recommended in this age of Kali. And it's unfortunate in the modern world, people seem to prefer indirect meanings of things. I think it's fair to say. Rather than the direct meaning, give an indirect meaning. We know, especially in the higher echelons of academia, one is encouraged actually to give their own interpretation of different great branches of knowledge. But the Bhagavat school, the Vaishnava school, always emphasises the direct understanding. Just like we can scratch our nose if it's itchy by putting our hand behind our head and coming around that way, but that's more difficult, and why waste our time? Similarly, when the world does open up again and we can renew our travel plans, everyone, I'm sure, will be thinking how to get from point A to point B in the most direct way, because travelling is always a great botheration, full of austerity, and it's going to be even more full of austerity in the future. So this is, of course, bhakti is direct, taking the direct path. So from Sridhar Mayapur we venture west, and once, of course, we pass the boundaries of the sacred land of Bharatvarsha, then we can go all the way around, and even there may be great monotheistic religions and greatly advanced materialistic cultures and so on. We come all the way back around, and as we get closer and closer to India, again we see it's gone from impersonalism to voidism. In great countries like Japan and Thailand and China, we see it becomes even more voidistic. Prabhupada gave a talk once at a very big university in Gainesville, Florida, and he very graciously and cordially welcomed the young students and thanked them for coming. And then he brought them back to reality by saying, living in this very remote part of the world, so far distant from the centre of the universe, Sridhar Mayapur. So the young students, Gainesville, big university, I'm not sure what they... But that was Prabhupada's vision, that Mahaprabhu's movement, and of course we know Srila Prabhupada referred to Mayapur as his place of worship. So there are many wonderful personalities in Mahaprabhu's movement. Sometimes his movement is described like a tree. And we all know the most prominent part of a tree is the trunk. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is compared to the trunk of the Chaitanya tree. And of course every tree from the trunk branches, some large, some small, sprout. And then there are smaller branches and twigs and fruits and flowers. But there's also a little, under the earth, there is a root system. So, and it's from that root system that the great trunk has sprouted. So that root system, interestingly, is described as Srila Madhavendra Puri, who was at Kalpavriksha tree in Goloka Vrindavan. And from him, of course, Madhavendra Puri had many wonderful disciples. He was a sannyasi coming in the line of Madhvaracharya. And he had many disciples all over India. Pundarik Vijayanidhi, Advaita Acharya, and Mahaprabhu's spiritual master, Ishwara Puri, are just some. And there was one Sanodiya Brahmana living in Mathura who was very old. And when Mahaprabhu finally came to Mathura and was performing his wonderful Sankirtan pastimes, this elderly disciple of Madhavendra Puri, he saw the Lord. And immediately he understood that this divine person must have some connection with my spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri. So he invited the Lord to his home and for lunch. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and of course all was revealed that Mahaprabhu, yes, in fact, did have, through the connection with his spiritual master, Ishwara Puri, he was a grand disciple of the great Madhavendra Puri. And as Mahaprabhu travelled throughout the length and breadth of India for 6 years, he met other venerable, very elderly disciples of Madhavendra Puri. It's said that there were in total 9 sannyasis who joined Mahaprabhu after he met them on his travels back in Puri. Some like Paramananda Puri and Brahmananda Bharati and Brahmananda Puri. And the Lord's own personal secretary, Swarup Damodar, he was also a sannyasi, but he wore white cloth because he acted as the Lord's secretary, and so many different personalities were coming from all over India wanting to have a personal audience, a darshan with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Swarup Damodar would have to, as the secretary, make those appointments, and he would have to deal with many different types of people. So as not to disrupt the social order, he, unlike the other sannyasis, he wore white cloth. And he and Paramananda Puri is actually described as the incarnation of Uddhava, according to Gaura Ganadesh Deepika. So these 9 sannyasis are described in Caitanya Caritamrita and Chaitanya Bhagavat as the extensions of the main root of Madhavendra Puri. And they were there, very venerable, wonderful, exalted personalities, and Mahaprabhu very much wanted to have them in his movement, and they all agreed. Some were on their way to take bath in the Ganges from some other part of India, and they said after they had done that, they would certainly come and reside in Puri, which they did. And it was a standard, if someone invited Lord Chaitanya to lunch, it was not only the Lord who would come, but as many of these venerable sannyasis would come as well and be fed. So it's interesting that Srila Prabhupada had unlimited names of Krishna to award his first ever disciples. The first historic initiations at 22nd Avenue, he gave the name Brahmananda to one of his very first and dearmost disciples, which is very, very wonderful. And Brahmananda's brother, Gagamuni, he asserts that his brother was always spiritually inclined and always was religious and studying and reading religious books and so on. And Prabhupada acknowledged that. He said he has been spiritual his whole life. So he gave this wonderful name, Brahma Ananda. And of course it's delightful when he accepted him as his disciple. Brahmananda's mother, and Gagamuni's mother, was there at the initiation. She sat in a chair at the initiation. And Prabhupada asked Brahmananda, you go and offer obeisances to your mother. And he did that. And Prabhupada was very cordial to Brahmananda and Gagamuni's mother. And I said, oh, you're so fortunate, you have two wonderful sons, they've become devotees of Krishna. And then Prabhupada asked her for a donation. And the mother said, Swami, I've given you two sons. And Prabhupada said, oh, that's all right. You may be knowing in these unprecedented times that Prabhupada himself was actually quarantined one time in Bombay. Speaking of Brahmananda Prabhu, Prabhupada had flown for the first time to Africa, to Kenya. And 5 invitations had come in practically simultaneously for Prabhupada to visit big temples in different parts of the world. So he asked Shyamasundar, his secretary, where do you think we should go? And Shyamasundar said, Prabhupada, we've never been to Africa. Prabhupada said, I was thinking the same thing. So they went to Africa together and had a very exciting time in Nairobi and Mombasa. Many programs there. And then they flew back to Bombay. And when they arrived back in Mumbai, the immigration official asked to see their yellow fever certificate. And Shyamasundar's heart just dropped. And he was a secretary. He made all the travel arrangements, but he didn't know such a thing was necessary. So the immigration official, when Shyamasundar protested vehemently, this is Swami Bhaktivedanta, Prabhupada had only recently held hugely successful Pandal programs for a whole week in Bombay. The Hare Krishna movement was exploding. It was very early days, maybe 1970 or 71. And there was devotees waiting to greet Prabhupada. There was a kirtan roaring out in the arrivals hall. And Shyamasundar protested, but the man was immovable. He said, even if Indira Gandhi was to arrive, she was the Prime Minister of India at the time, we would not let her in. So Shyamasundar said, well, what are we to do? And the man said, well, you can get back on the plane to Nairobi, or we have one quarantine facility. You'll have to stay there for 6 days. So Prabhupada cut in at that point. He said, we will stay in your facility. So they went there, and it was very clean and modern, and the devotees were able to bring prasadam for them every day. Prabhupada said at that time, he said, we need a rest, and I have correspondence to catch up with, and there was always Prabhupada's translation and of his books. So they went to the quarantine facility, but after 2 or 3 days, Prabhupada said to Shyamasundar, I think I have my yellow fever certificate in my almirah in the Calcutta temple. Ring Jayapataka and tell him to post it here. So the call was made. Jayapataka was in Calcutta at the time, postal system. He got on a plane, flew straight to Bombay airport, came straight there, and Prabhupada stepped out. And Shyamasundar stayed for an extra 3 days, but Prabhupada was released to go about continuing his wonderful mission. And Shyama Sundar's convinced that Prabhupada knew he had that all along, but he just he wanted to rest and catch up on correspondence. So, so let's just see. We've got so many notes. We've got too many notes here. Let's just see where we can go from here. Hare Krishna. Oh, let's say something about Chandrasekhar Acharya, because he's a wonderful personality. The uncle, actually the blood uncle of Mahaprabhu. He was actually the husband of Sachimata's sister. And they were neighbours in Mayapur. And actually Sachimata's sister's name was Sabajaya. And they were born, the whole family was born in Sylhet. And as we mentioned, he's the incarnation of Chandradev, the moon god. The place in Mayapur, which was rediscovered by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj as the actual birth site of Mahaprabhu, that is sometimes referred to as Chandrasekhar Bhavan. And Chandrasekhar Acharya is also known, Hare Krishna, it'll come back somewhere, Acharya Ratna is also sometimes referred to as known as Acharya Ratna. So, and when Mahaprabhu lost his father, Jagannath Mishra, during his early teens, Sachimata asked Chandrasekhar, will you please be Nimai's guardian? And Chandrasekhar took over all the affairs of managing Mother Sachi's household. And he was a very competent person. And he used to also go every year for the first 6 years, it's generally accepted. Mahaprabhu invited all his most confidential associates, between 200 and 300, would go every year to Jagannath Puri to associate with Mahaprabhu and attend all of Lord Jagannath's festivals. So he's a very important personality, and Chandrasekhar Acharya was also one of the 4 persons only who Mahaprabhu allowed to assist in the Lord's acceptance of sannyas. Lord Nityananda, Gadadhar Pandit, Mukunda Datta and Chandrasekhar. And Chandrasekhar performed all the rituals for Mahaprabhu's sannyas. And of course Keshava Bharati Maharaj was the very fortunate sannyasi who awarded Mahaprabhu the renounced order of life. And there was one Baba who hesitated, did not want to cut this particular personality's, shave his head. But Mahaprabhu convinced him, no, you must do this. The man was weeping torrents of tears. He knew it was breaking the hearts of all Mahaprabhu's family members and associates. Sachimata had requested the night before, why do you have to do this? All your friends are here. You can continue your Sankirtan pastimes here in Navadvip. Why do you have to go away? Vishvarup went away. Now you're going away. It was heartbreaking. So the Baba hesitated, but and even afterwards it's said that he became so depressed, the poor Baba became practically dysfunctional for some period of time before he composed himself. So those personalities were there, and one of them was Chandrasekhar Acharya. And then Mahaprabhu ordered him, you please go to Varanasi. I'm coming there soon. So he was there, and of course Mahaprabhu stayed at his house and he took his meals. Chandrasekhar and Tapan Mishra would invite the Lord. And it's also said that we often hear that Mahaprabhu's the famous nocturnal kirtans for 1 year were held at Srivas Angam, but some nights they were actually held at Chandrasekhar Prabhu's house, Chandrasekhar Bhavan. So they were wonderful neighbours and a very, very exciting personality. Let's just see here, Hare Krishna. So, perhaps I'll stop and Maharaj, a comment or two, please. Questions, comments from anyone. Microphone if anybody needs, ladies. Gentlemen. Yep.
Thank you very much for your class. It was like swimming in the Caitanya. Very nice. This is it's a very question actually.
I'm not good on those. You can, Maharaj will.
Possible to answer this. Anyway, you were relating to Caitanya, reflecting on selling his goods, and it's also in relation to the Holy Name. It's also mentioned in relation to this pastime in the 25th chapter of Madhya Lila that he was also his personal frames, but he was selling and he was going to discount it against who stated that he gave away for free. So my question is, in this instance, he's distributing his own frame. We also know in relation to Narottam Das Thakur, he distributed his own frame and a talent for him. So the question is does he distribute that to everybody or they particular instances? In other words, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu distributing his own Christian frame for all of us? Or is it a different sort of frame?
It's a very esoteric question. Maharaj, do you want to... all I can... That's probably not going to help, but... Mahaprabhu's movement did not cease 500 years ago. It's still going on, and he's glorified as Patita Pavanam, which means he is the deliverer of the most fallen. It's interesting. He wants to give his mercy to everyone. And his mercy, as we quite often say, the modern day pastimes of Lord Chaitanya. Manifesting Lord Chaitanya's pastimes to the world. And the Lord does have unlimited, he's not limited, he is the Supreme Person, so he has unlimited capacity to distribute both his Gauda Prema and Krishna Prema. Krishna's very, a little difficult to understand how he appears often in covered incarnations. It's said that everyone in the material world is trying to be God except God. When God comes, he doesn't want his intimate dealings with his most confidential associate. He doesn't want to be recognized as God, so he keeps himself covered in many instances. And that way he's able to very freely distribute his mercy. And Namo Mahavananyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauda Tuisi Namaha. Rupa Goswami has glorified Mahaprabhu. You are the most munificent incarnation because you're freely distributing what no other incarnation ever gave, love for Krishna. So this particular Kali Yuga is really special. It's very unique. It's said there are 1,000 Kali Yugas in a day of Brahma. This is the only Kali Yuga where Mahaprabhu appears. There is a Yuga avatar who's described as an expansion of Krishna and always inaugurates Harinam Samkirtan because that is the Yuga Dharma for every Kali Yuga. But the other 999 Kali Yugas, it's not Mahaprabhu. It's not original Swayam Bhagavan Krishna appearing in disguise in a golden form, Gaura Narayan, with the mood and complexion of Srimati Radharani. So this Kali Yuga is really, really special. So that's about all I know. Maharaj, something else?
Your question was the different levels of praying.
Chaitanya says I'm going to do my own personal praying.
Yeah.
So is that's not Radharani's praying?
Yeah, well, there's different levels of praying. You know, there's Narottam Dastar and so on. You know, like just like Radha's praying is in a very special category, and Krishna infuses that with extra love because of her position. So in the praying given to everyone, and will be according to the. It's distributed freely, as you rightly said, but there are special devotees who are empowered with a special flavour and a special power praying. So it's distributed according to the, in general to everyone, but there are special devotees who get that extra empowerment praying. So in Lord Chaitanya's Leela, in Puri and in other places, there's a special praying that's reserved for them. Well, my answer to that is there's different levels of praying. And the distribution of it, there are different levels of that as well. But there is a general level. I was just going to ask you said that something about the Indian and the Vaishnava, they list as Vaishnava.
Yeah, Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, some of you might have heard a couple of visits back here. There was a survey, this was how Maharaj explained it, done in India recently, and 70% of the population said, when asked, what is your religion, they put Vaishnava.
Really?
And of course we know Maharaj is a long-term resident of India, travel widely. So, but of what level Vaishnav? Yeah.
So not Hindu Vaishnav.
Excuse me?
They didn't put Hindu, they put Vaishnav.
Yeah, well, he said Vaishnav. He didn't mention the word Hindu, so yeah,
That's interesting.
interesting. So.
I'd like to see you really
Sure.
Just in relation to Chandrasekhar and Tatma Mishra, I can't remember quite exactly what the reason is, but for some reason he wouldn't eat it. Chandrasekhar, he would take his lunch at Tatma Mishra.
Can't recall.
Is that something to do with caste or something? Or?
Not sure. Maharaj, can you remember that?
Chaitanya wouldn't eat at Chandrasekhar's house. He would reside there and take lunch at Tatma Mishra every day.
I don't know the specifics of that. It's not that there was a caste consideration on this one. That's not a consideration.
It's mentioned.
His family relationship.
Sure, he was his uncle.
Obviously, it wasn't a caste consideration, but he wanted to also be merciful to Tatma Mishra. So he was staying at the house, giving his mercy to Chandrasekhar, but then he thought, well, let me also give mercy to Tatma Mishra by taking lunch there.
Yeah.
Well, that quite often happens. We travel and we stay at one house, but then everyone invites us, we go to those places. Quite often we take lunch more outside than where we're staying.
Yes.
Because we get the invitation. I think that was the main consideration, not consideration of the caste or position.
Yeah. Even the Sanadiya Brahmana in Mathura, Sanadiya Brahmanas are considered a lower caste in the Brahman hierarchy, but still Mahaprabhu went to his house, just as when Krishna came to Hastinapur on that famous occasion when Duryodhana was very much eager to curry favour, shall we say, with Krishna, invited him and had his cooks prepare a monumental feast for Krishna. But Krishna went instead to Dhritarashtra's brother's Vidura's house, correct? And even Vidura was in so much ecstasy, was at the time when Vidura was peeling bananas and giving Krishna the skins. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was too much ecstatic.
He offered the skin. Krishna ate the skin.
He ate the skin, yeah.
His wife was generally given the husband the skin.
Okay.
And,
All right.
so there's one more to that pastime.
Sure.
When Duryodhana offered that feast, Krishna said to him, there's two reasons why you eat. You eat if something's cooked with love, and then you'll eat it, or you eat if you're hungry. He said, I'm not hungry for that.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Krishna Kirtan. Jai Sri Caitanya Charitamrita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.